it'll be an intergovernmental solution, and essentially future decisions will be handed to a UN agency of some sort.
Okay. Leah, what about you?
Well, looking at kind of the level of disagreement among actors and governments in particular, I focus on the Enhanced Cooperation Working Group, and recently we've seen a contribution by the Indian government and their assessment of what mechanisms exist and whether they're adequate in dealing with a number of internet-related public policy issues. And they basically made a submission saying there aren't any. Now, that is obviously in stark opposition to what we think on our side and a lot of others. And I do think that because of this that this political tension has actually caused the second committee of the General Assembly to start a separate intergovernmental process to discuss what happens, what modalities we need to put in place for the WSIS review. So they couldn't even agree on the modalities. And now this is being discussed in a separate group chaired by Tunisia and Finland, I think. And I don't think, I agree with Alex on that. So I don't think that we're going to see a UN-centered body like in a year's time, because there is no consensus on that. And I don't think that's going to happen very soon. Perhaps what might happen and what could be pushed in terms of reform is maybe a low-hanging fruit is the IANA, globalization of the IANA function. I know that might, in 2015, that might be something that could be achievable. Also, we should have in mind that there's the IGF renewal coming up in 2015. So there's going to be a discussion of what happens with the IGF. Should we keep it? Should we lose it? Well, should we transform it? If we do, how? So a lot of difficult question. When you ask, like, what do you see yourself in? What do you see in governance in 2015? I was just, oh my God, I'm going to be so stressed by the time 2015 comes. So yes, and I do think that the discussion is just going to become more, I think the tensions are going to grow. And Brazil offers opportunities perhaps to find agreements among, let's say kind of developed countries and some middle ground countries. And I hope we could use it for that.
I'm going to bring in Chris, who I think is going to comment on his vision for what will be in 2015, and then we'll go to Jamie. There's a bit of echo, but we'll try.
Why don't I put something in the chat room and
I think we'll you type it in, we'll read it out. We are failing miserably with the connection this morning. Okay, Jamie.
I mean, I agree with Leah at a practical level. I think the best that can be achieved is some consensus around a roadmap on further globalization of some of these ISTAR accountability issues. At a political level, what I hope we can get to is perhaps to shift the debate more towards the practical and less towards the ideological, and begin to sort of put some of these issues back into their proper swim lanes. I don't know if that is achievable, because there's lots of people who want to keep this political, but I think that should be what we try to do.
Let's maybe go to you while Chris is adding some extra comments. Okay, so Nigel, let's wait for the microphone. Laura, you're doing a sterling job of manning these various fronts.
Yes, thank you very much, Nigel Hickson. I mean, just very brief points, and I think it's very difficult to look to the future and where we'll be. Just first of all, factual. I think really the Brazil conference looks at both principles, and I think the discussion we've just had has been very useful, but also the roadmap. I think something that Leah mentioned, the roadmap on moving forward. Proposals for the Brazil conference have to be in by the 1st of March. That's what the committee have decided. And Leah mentioned that a number of organizations, a number of associations will put in proposals. One of these is a high-level panel that ICANN have set up, chaired by President Ilves from Estonia, and including Vint Cerf and Secretary General of the Council of Europe and various other eminent people. That group, that panel, will produce a roadmap, will produce a paper that will be an input for Brazil. Many other civil society groups and other associations like Milton Mueller that was mentioned will also put in papers for Brazil. But I think it's important to note that Brazil will discuss a roadmap going forward, because I think that relates also to the discussion you had on the IGF and whether the IGF remains a global discussion forum where everyone can come along and say what they want and not have to be pre-scripted. And you'll see where I'm going on this, but, you know, turn it into a decision-making process and you will ruin the very nature, the very essence of the quality and the value of the IGF will be lost. I don't get particularly opinionated about that. But and finally, and I'll shut up. Finally, what has been mentioned but not explained, and I realize one can't discuss everything in the space of a panel, but the discussions in Brazil are going on, but there are also equally important discussions taking place in New York. Today, ICANN is hosting a lunch with perhaps 20 to 30 attaches if the snow stops falling, where we'll be discussing internet governance. These attaches, as has been mentioned, will have the job, and these are attaches from governments, and I know governments are only part of the equation, but governments are important. These attaches have got to decide on the modality for the future of the WSIS review. If they decide, as Russia has been pushing them and other countries have been pushing them, to have a global summit that will rewrite the Tunis agenda, then this time next year, or perhaps in 2 years' time, we might be facing a very different situation. So there is a lot going on, and the UK IGF, in bringing people together here, is doing what's really necessary, which we're encouraging. Many other stakeholders are encouraging national governments. The French are having an IGF on the 10th of March. Other national governments, there's the Eurodig, which is very important in June. These discussions where stakeholders come together and discuss the future of internet governance. Sorry, and thanks.
That's very helpful. So bearing in mind that we also want to feed back to Ed Vaizey later on this morning, this session was very much about your vision for the governance of the internet. Are there any other messages, people who haven't spoken, are there any other points that we want to raise that we can take back to the Minister when he appears? Khalid, and then the lady over there, my name, I can't remember, yeah. And if you could be quite brief so we can fit in as many as possible in the last 5 minutes.
I will definitely keep it very brief. On the 29th of January, we held an event in London about the change happening to the internet, and we were streaming it around the world. And we showcased some of the studies we conducted in emerging markets. Facts. Half of the currently connected internet users today are in Asia. Fact. So we can take this as vision for 2015. The next billion internet users, and then the following next billion after that, will not come from the West. They will come from emerging markets. So factor those points in, and what it tells us is we need to make this ethos that we are trying to improve upon serve them. Otherwise, they will not join it. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. And then the lady from Switzerland Food Trust.
Hello, I'm Christiana Rickson. I've got two hats. I'm a research student with the University of Bedfordshire, and I also had a policy at a charity called Susie Lampley Trust. And I actually heard about this through my academic contacts. And it strikes me a lot from my charitable perspective that sitting here, there's a lot of top-down discussion about governance principles that will affect global population of essentially very engaged individuals. So my hope for 2015 would be there being a way to find that the voices of the people that we're hoping these governance principles will affect will have been found to have engaged more effectively in conversations like this, because from my perspective at the moment, it seems like there's a fundamental layer missing, and I can't see how, kind of echoing Dominic comments, how anything we would achieve would be successful unless we find a way to properly engage with that sector as well.
Wonderful, thank you. And then I'm going to make you run around, sorry, over here. Thank you.
Fish BCS again. I just wanted to add that actually, of the next few billion connections to the internet, most of them are going to not be people at all. They're going to be things, and that is something that needs to be taken into account.
Thank you. Any more? Okay, I'm going to go back to our panel. You get one last message, and Chris's remarks as well when you've got back to your desk. Briefly then, one sentence.
Oh, it's difficult to do this in one sentence. I think for all the reasons that we've discussed, I think what's really important is that we have a program. We go into this with an intention to develop a program for concrete, practical reforms, and in particular, reaching out to those parts of the internet community that haven't necessarily been well served hitherto. That, for me, is the most important thing.
Wonderful. Thank you. Jamie?
And we need to listen to what this next billion have to say.
Yep. There?
I was going to say what Alex was saying, but yeah, basically, I think we need to be realistic about what the issues, where these concerns and the drivers for change are coming from, and kind of use that to inform our thinking and come up with practical outputs and to feed into the roadmap. Thanks.
Wonderful. Should we read out one or two of Chris's comments?
We can. So firstly, he agrees with Alex's comments regarding the timing. He's heartened to hear Leah describe the globalisation of IANA as low-hanging fruit. He thinks that we will still be discussing how to create a multi-stakeholder way of dealing with emerging issues. And on dealing with internet governance, we have gone through the planning stage regarding the multi-stakeholder model, and we're now in the storming phase. By the end of 2015, we are likely to still be storming, but getting closer to norming. And that's it. That's the end of the script. Thank you.
Wonderful. I'm going to call them. That was a really great session. I'm sure it's very stuffy in here, so you've all done very well to maintain some attention throughout. If I can thank, obviously, our great panelists, Alex, Jamie, Leah, and Chris remotely for bearing with us through those technical difficulties, and obviously also to you, all of you, for the great questions and comments. And I think we have coffee now for half an hour, and then we'll reconvene afterwards with the Minister. Thank you very much. I have to say that is my pet hate that is doing the remote. Either. Well, I did do anything, yeah. It's gone slowly. Yeah. Vicky did an amazing job in chairing it. I didn't have to do anything difficult like actually something substantive, but you did. It was a nice mix of subtly different views. Really?